Let's go. Which camera?
This camera.
That camera.
That camera. Wow, have I ever thought that I will be presenting the project framework speaking to Dan Ram? No, I'll be honest. I am thrilled, I am nervous, I am super excited because what we're going to speak about, culture and communication, are extremely important to the foundation of any business. And now we're going to decipher those terms with Dan, who knows more than anybody in this world about these power terms.
I wouldn't go that big, but I hope that this is valuable to you in our conversation.
So how could you describe culture in your own words? What does it mean to you?
All right, so let's start with the geographic background.
All right.
So I'm the son of an Indian diplomat. I grew up in 10 countries on 4 continents. Every 2 to 3 years, we moved to a new country, and not just a new country. New school, new culture, new food, new weather, new people, new clothes, everything kept changing. And one important thing is, I didn't just grow up and I don't just come from 10 countries, I come with 10 countries. And what that means is every environment affects you, impacts you. So your school, your neighborhood, the conversations at your dining table, all of that is what makes you unique and what makes you individual. So when we think about culture and specifically about diversity with culture, at one level, it's the uniqueness of us. You are so unique even from your sibling. It's so unique even from your classmate, so unique even from the people you share your office with. Because everything that is your background makes you the person that you are today. And so the first part is identify your own uniqueness. But the second part to that is, of course, the more varied your experiences, I think the more we develop, right? Yes, it's challenging to say, hi, my name is Dan, every 2 years growing up in a new school. Yes, it is scary to look at a menu when I'm here in Munich and go, I don't recognize any of these words. Or to get into a subway like we did yesterday and go in the wrong direction and not realize it.
Story of my life.
But these are the experiences that shape us, right? These are the experiences that make us more courageous, that make us more bold, that make us more curious, that make us develop and mature. And so the second part to that is, so first part is find your own uniqueness, and your background is your uniqueness.
Let me add to that
Yes.
a question.
Okay.
You say curious, bold, doing so many things on the positive scale.
Yes.
But some people feel defeated out of this change.
Yeah.
How do you take it positively? What do you do? What are your small tricks to make it work?
So I was talking to a young student, yesterday or the day before about this. And he was like, how do I take more risk? How do I step out of the comfort zone? And I said, identify the worst thing that can happen to you. And for most people that are going to be watching this or that you're going to be working with, the worst is actually not that bad. Now, if you were in a developing country in abject poverty, the worst is really bad. But for most of us, we have some family or some parent that we can go to or some friend that we can stay with if it gets really bad.
Right.
Even if you lose all your money, you will eventually have the skills or access to the money to come out of it. So the worst case scenario is actually not that bad. And I think if you just write it down and say, if I fail for months on end, even years on end, the worst case scenario is I will sleep on a couch in a friend's house. I will still have food. I will still have some shelter over my head. And that's okay.
This paradigm is very different. It makes us feel like cowardly not to start something.
Because that worst case scenario, for many people, I hope, is still better than being in a job that you hate over a period of time, being in a circumstance that drains who you are, your creativity, your passion for life. Because you may not realize when you take the job, but 15 years down the line, you wake up, you look in the mirror and go like, who is this person? And that worst case scenario, the depression, the isolation, the loneliness, the self-hate, the regret, I think is significantly worse than the physical worst case scenario. Okay, I lived for a couple months on a couch. In my case, it was that I was unemployed for 2 years. But look at me now. I could not have gotten here if I wasn't unemployed for 2 years. It was necessary. So I think if you're afraid, just write down the worst case scenario, look at it and say, can you survive that? Mm-hmm. The answer has to be an obvious yes. Yes, you can survive that. And if so, then step out, live, explore.
So this is one side of it, the inner part
yes.
of culture. And what was the second part that you wanted to express?
So diversity. It really is about being open to stepping out of the comfort zone and stepping into the new. What I do currently, for those who may not know, is I'm a professional speaker and event MC. To be an event MC, you cannot go to college to become an event MC. You cannot get a certification or degree to become an event MC. There is no training program for event MCs. What I do right now, which is amazing, and I love it, and it makes me feel so alive. And we were talking to a guy yesterday about this concept of flow. I am in a state of flow doing this job. I could not have landed on it without trial and error. I could not have arrived here without going left, going right, going straight, going up, going down. I could not have arrived at this moment without taking some risks. And the only way to do that is to be diverse. And so for me, I worked for KPMG, I worked for the UN, I worked for World Vision and Team Hope, humanitarian agencies. I worked in some traditional businesses. I was an advisor to the Irish government doing bureaucratic governmental work. I was a radio presenter, a voiceover artist, a lecturer in the university, and I'm saying all of that to show you, even in my professional life, the diversity of exploration. But the beautiful part is now, as an event MC, when I'm introducing a politician, I have a connection because I worked in the government. When I am talking to a researcher and academic, I have a connection because I have 2 degrees under my belt and I was a lecturer. When I meet an entrepreneur, I have that connection because I have built 4 or 5 businesses, not counting all the failed businesses, but let's just go with the successful ones. 4 or 5 successful businesses right now. And so, to me, that diversity of experience is a huge part of our culture. And so, I think you can only appreciate, and you said this in your introduction of me, the diversity of me. So for anyone watching, the diversity of yourself, and empathize with the diversity of the world and the opportunities around you. It will only happen if you are culturally willing to take risks. So don't sit in the homogeneity of your circumstances. Don't sit in the safe and the comfort of the world that you're in, the bubble that you're in. Get out of that bubble.
All right, but when you explained where you are at the moment, it's almost the story of Beyonce. We see the...
Thank you. I want to be Beyonce.
Or better.
Or better.
So we see already a product that is more or less developed.
Do you know what the beautiful thing about Beyonce is, though? I have studied Beyonce from the time she was young, and all her even early iterations of, say, Destiny's Child. The thing I've noticed about Beyonce is she never compromises. She is always upping her own game. She is not competing with anyone else in the industry. She's competing with herself. She is outdoing herself every single time. Age is not an issue. Resources is not an issue. Her life situation is not an issue because a lot of us are just hiding behind the excuses. And the thing I love about her is she didn't care if she was a teenager or not. She's still giving her best performance. And now she doesn't care if she's a mom or not. She's still giving her best performance. It doesn't matter if her dad is managing her or her husband is managing her, or she's still giving her best and going better and better and better. And that is something, I know you said that to me I look like a finished product. And I think if you talk to Beyonce, and I will certainly say this for myself, I don't feel like a finished product because I am not willing to compromise and go, I have arrived. It's always like, oh, I see the next level. How do I get there? I see the next level. After this interview, I will think about what I could have done better. And this is not the first time I've done this interview. I've done it so many times, and yet I'm always thinking, how can I do better? Where can I connect better? How can I give better examples? So I think one thing that's common for Beyonce, myself, and others that I interview in my job is curiosity. Always wanting to learn, always wanting to improve. The second is this idea of #never settle. Never compromise. Never just accept it. There's always more. There's always more that you can push yourself. I was looking at Jennifer Lopez's Instagram account yesterday. She is 50. She is a mom. She is engaged and about to get married. She is busy doing movies, businesses, and everything else. And she's working out. She is in her best physical state right now. age is not an issue, life circumstance is not an issue. This idea of never settle. She has achieved so much. She will always be Jenny in the block. She can relax and do that for the next 30 years, but no, she's upping herself every time. So I'd say for anyone listening, don't settle, no excuses, go build. Now's the time.
Maybe some people will mistake what you say now with perfectionism. So I want to really build a very big line between the both of them, because perfectionism is stopping people from progressing a lot.
Yeah. So, you know my 4 words, right? Start now.
Start simple.
There we go. I think that is the counter to perfectionism. So what I'm saying, this idea of curiosity and never settling, doesn't mean imagine the perfect scenario and don't release or don't promote or don't engage until you reach that, because that perfect scenario never arrives. Which is why I have the start now, start simple. It's always about that next step, that next step, that next step. And it's not like taking a giant leap. It's about just literally what is the next simple act I can do to get me one closer to the dream. So if you have, say, a problem that you're trying to solve as an entrepreneur, which is where most entrepreneurs begin. The first simple step, write it down. Sketch out an idea. Talk to another person. These are not complicated. You can do it right now. You can hit pause on the interview and you can call a friend and say, I've got a problem I've identified. What do you think? Validate it for me, yes or no. Do quick market research. That's what Start Now, Start Simple is. But the beautiful part is if you do that every single day and never settle and go, well, I've now done my C-Rad funding, we've got 12 million in the bank, I've got a team of 80, we're global. If you never settle, one day you'll be on the cover of Forbes because someone will be like, how on earth did you build this mega empire? But really for all these people, it's just taking that one step, that one step, that one step. I think that's the only way to beat the perfectionism and the idealism, is to break it down to practically today, what can you do to get you there?
And if you think of your own entrepreneurial journey,
yeah,
what was your first conscious step?
Well, it depends if it was the accident startup or the intentional startup.
For both of them, what do you think? Because for the accidental one, probably it was not a conscious step. Maybe life just got you there.
I only knew the word entrepreneur when the Irish government gave me a visa saying that I was an entrepreneur. So it said on my visa, entrepreneur visa. And I was like, oh, I guess I'm an entrepreneur. But I think true entrepreneurs have always been entrepreneurial. So my accidental startup was when I was 12 years old. I wanted to celebrate Halloween. My parents said, that's the devil's game, don't do Halloween. So I took that rejection, that no, and I said, well, I still want to celebrate with my friends, so what can we do? So we created an alternative Halloween that was all positive and friendly. And what we did is I just got some of my friends from my neighborhood. Everyone was responsible for bringing a table from their house, putting the table in the middle of a cricket ground, and everyone was responsible for coming up with their own activity. So it could be a game, it could be a magic show, it could be a store to sell things. And so every child, we're all 12 years old, 13 years old, we all had to come up with something. So for mine, it was a game of taking these cans, like these tomato cans, and we make a pyramid, and I gave people a tennis ball, and they had to stand far away, and if they could knock it all down, they won a prize. And more people lost than won, so I made money.
Wow.
And so
I have to say this, wow. Now when you think about it, do you realize that maybe it was the sign that you will be busy with events at this time of your life?
Could never have known at that point. Could never have known. And so that was the accidental startup. And really, the first step was taking the no and the rejection and doing something positive with it. The first step was in the brain. Because most people will stop at, no, okay. Like Michael Jordan, you're off the basketball team because you're not good enough. No, okay, go cry at home. Mom, I didn't make the basketball team. But what did Michael Jordan do? Go back on the court, practice, practice, practice. Now the legend that is Michael Jordan. And I think for me, it was all the same thing. You take that no, and the first practical thing to do, mindset. Change that no to a yes. And then I said, what other option is there? And then you build on it. And for me, it's always using the resources you have right now. For most of us, we have a phone that is so powerful. There are a million first steps that you can do with your phone. Whether using the voice recorder to just document the thought that you have in your head, whether using the notes to sketch out the concept that you have, whether sending an email to a potential friend, partner, investor, and saying, I'm starting this idea, what do you think? There are a million ways, practical steps you can take. But for me, it was just using the resources I had. My friends in the neighborhood, a table that everyone had in their house, and just a flexibility for whatever activity you want to do, you can do. The beautiful part is we made a lot of money and then we donated it.
Very nice.
And
I think it's a good moment also to remind those people who wish to build something that they need to take a moment to acknowledge what they did in their past that might be accepted as entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Because we weren't calling it that way.
No.
And some people are hesitant, they think maybe I don't have this sauce in me.
I think the struggle for a lot of people that are feeling lost and with no direction is they don't appreciate and self-congratulate enough their experiences. They're waiting for somebody else to validate it when really we have to look at it, because the story I just shared with you is a basic, normal story. But I have spent time thinking about what was my earliest moment and appreciating the fact that my parents supported this moment, appreciating this baby step. But now I work with some of the biggest events in the world, hundreds of thousands of people every year, but honestly could not have happened if that passion was not ignited as a 12-year-old to say, I can take an empty playground and turn it into an event. Could not have done it. But if you're watching, if you play with Lego, that is a form of entrepreneurship. If you like puzzles, that is an early stage of entrepreneurship. If you like breaking things and figuring out how to put it back together, these are all the insignificant, and yet these are the steps along the way of entrepreneurship. You just have to validate yourself, you know? Unfortunately, the stories I will share are not incredibly impressive. They're basic steps, but that's why I kept coming up with Start Now, Start Simple, because I could not do what is amazing now if it wasn't for the very normal basic steps along the way.
Even what you're doing right now at this very moment,
yes.
As you said, you speak with big, very important professionals out of government, out of different countries in so many places, and still you take your time to talk to me, like in the smallest startup, just igniting something and just starting to build something from scratch. You take your time and you're here, and I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you having me on this. Yeah, because I think when you appreciate the first step, you never forget it. Because you can't get to step 10 or level 10 if you don't start with level 1 and step 1. And for you, I know you're not at level 1 because of the amount of work you've put into that amazing framework, the project framework that you have built. So to come alongside at this point and support and help is exciting, because I know that I could not have done what I'm doing now if other people didn't come to me at those early stages to help me along the way. So it's about not forgetting where you begin.
So this was the unconscious step, and what was the conscious with your business?
So the intentional startup was, I was unemployed for 2 years. So even though I have an economics degree from Yale and I have an MBA from Trinity College, 2 top universities, 2 top degrees, when a recession hits, a recession hits. And so I applied for jobs. I really wanted a job. I did not want to be self-employed. So my entrepreneurship journey began out of necessity, not because it was sexy or lifestyle cool, because I needed money. And so I built a co-working space. That was the intentional step. But again, I'll start with mindset. The world was saying, Dan, you can't be employed. The circumstances were saying, Dan, it's not just you, nobody can be employed. I had to take that and go, but there is a door, and I have to find that door, and I will not stop until that door happens. And if someone doesn't open it for me, I'm just going to say yes and try to open any opportunity that comes along the way. And so that's what happened, and that's how the first startup began. And the first practical step was I was thinking, all right, I don't have a job. There must be other people who also don't have jobs. How do I get to them? So there was networking meetings, there was meetups, and I thought, and I saw this model in the US about 8 years ago at this point of co-working, but I'd never heard of it. We didn't have one in Dublin where I was living at that point. But this idea of people who are working for themselves, learning together, joining forces, collaborating at times, being a support relationally as well as professionally. It's like, this is a great model. And so just took that idea and brought that to Dublin. And that's where it began. That was the intentional startup, because at that point we got investors, we got funding. That's when I knew that's what entrepreneurs do. We solve problems. But as a kid, I was just solving problems because what kid doesn't have problems? What human does not have problems? It's just in my DNA to fix things when they're broken. And so that was my first intentional startup. But again, practical step, mindset, take the no, turn it to yes. Second, work with the resources you have. As a 12-year-old, was friends. As an intentional entrepreneur at that point, access to investors, meeting other entrepreneurs. I was older, I could do all that stuff. And so just use those resources, and then the momentum kicks in. And then all of a sudden you're talking to the Prime Minister of Ireland, like I was. All of a sudden you are traveling all the way to Texas to share this idea that you took from the US to Ireland, and now the US is asking you to come there to share the same idea that you took from there anyway. So, but all that only happens if you start with those baby steps.
Okay, but in this case we talk about your culture and your values and your mindset and you as a person.
Yes.
How do you take this and put them in a company and make a culture of a company, and everybody else within the company follow the same values that you find important as well?
That is a great question. I always identify values, and I always communicate that. So you've got your cameras, I've got my camera guy, but one of our earliest conversations was about why. And even this morning over breakfast, when we were talking about a little detail of something that needs to capture, I was thinking about why are we capturing in that angle? Not just what we're capturing, but why. What am I trying to communicate to the audience member? I'm always thinking about the why, which is the values. And when I started as an event organizer and now as an event MC, I wasn't just thinking about the practical steps of I introduce speakers, I sit down and interview, and what are the questions that I'm asking. I was thinking about why is the audience there? What do they want? How can this be of value to them? So that's all the value thing. So step one is write down these values. And then step two is start communicating that, whether it is through video, whether it's through podcasts, whether it's through, I know some companies, in my first startup, we had a social manifesto. So they signed a job description saying that these are the deliverables and this is how much they get paid for it. But they also signed a social manifesto, which for a co-working space is important because you have different people with different values now sharing the space. So we wrote stuff like, I remember number 7 on that was, I will trust others before expecting others to trust me. Because often we live in this ecosystem of like, if you are nice to me, then I'll be nice to you. And I want to flip it around like, no, it starts with you. You first give, exactly. Give the free take. Things like, I will always make time for others and expect others will make time for me. So we had all these things as like social manifesto, a sense of behavior based on values. So there's many ways to communicate these values, but you can't communicate if you don't identify it.
Do you think the values of the company should be different from your own personal values? Because I think some founders mistake that what they believe personally should be something that the whole brand should follow and the whole company behind.
Yes.
And it's not always the same thing, in my view.
It's not always the same thing, but it can be the same thing. It really depends on what the business is. Because the businesses I have built are deeply personal, problems that I am struggling with, that I am trying to fix. The first 6 months, year, 18 months, even 2 years, often the people I'm hiring are part of my DNA and my tribe. They think like me, feel like me. The way we work is often modeled around the way that I work because I am controlling so much of the CEO. But then when you start getting the board of advisors and when you get the other investors to start bringing other voices to it, then it starts morphing into something that's a little bit more different. And I will admit, as a CEO, it's painful. Because I remember even conversations, I'm like, but we didn't used to do it that way. And then an investor would say very politely, but this is a different company now, Dan. You know, the company that you built when it was 3 of you sitting in the garage is not the business that it is today. And you have to grow too. And then there's the most difficult part when you realize that you no more can be the CEO of your own business that you built. And there's a more qualified person to build and to continue to build what you started. So there are some sobering moments along the way of finding those moments where it separates. But for me personally, to be honest, the values of the initial team and the values of how we build on the idea is very much a flow of who I am. But it's also my personality type. And then there's the points where it starts separating. Now, if it was just a nice opportunity that was separate from me, so I heard 2 days ago that Allianz asked a friend of mine to build something out for them. That's very different because now you are building something for a company that has clients and values and things, so you build it around them. But for me, my own startups were initially, before we kind of got to like the second round or third round of funding, very much would have felt like Dan Ram when you walk into it. And then there's there's the moments of maturity where they separate, just as much as I keep growing and evolving.
But do you think it's important to define those values and to know for yourself what
Yes.
are your non-negotiable values?
And for me, some of my non-negotiables, again, it depends on the setting. So let me talk specifically around what I'm doing now as a professional MC, speaker, and social media content creator. I only work with great people that I respect and love. That's the first. Life is too short to just chase money. Life is too short just to chase a cool opportunity if I'm hating the opportunity along the way. So I love talking to you right now, which is why I'm accepting this. And I love our story of how we have connected over the years, and watching your own growth excites me. And you've seen me grow too, which I'm sure excites you too. So I work with people I love and I respect. Number one, non-negotiable. And I have turned down events, even great events. And even when they come to me like, Dan, you should not turn this down because we have so-and-so coming, and you introduce them like, but I will hate the whole opportunity and I will hate the whole experience, and life is too short for that. So that's the first non-negotiable. The second non-negotiable is I need to create time for myself. And that's because I know me and I'm an introvert. So even though my job looks like I'm charismatic and outgoing and extrovert and love people, and I do, there is an introvert side of me that needs attention to. So self-awareness and creating space for that is important. So non-negotiable, I don't work crazy hours. I don't do back-to-back, even if it needs to happen. I always carve time out. This morning before coming to you, I hit the gym for an hour and it was fantastic. This evening, I'm doing a bunch of stuff, but I'll be back in the hotel by 9 o'clock because I'll need those few hours just for me. Read a book, sit down, watch a show, listen to a podcast, go to the gym. So non-negotiable is me time. And especially the more your job involves being around other people, find the things that fuel you. That's the second non-negotiable value. Third non-negotiable value is impact. I care so much that what we do matters. We have to think about our legacy. I think everyone lives like they're gonna live forever, and we don't. And everyone lives like the world is gonna exist forever, and it's naturally gonna be a better place. It's not. We have to do our best every day for ourselves, for our communities, for the world. And so I think about, what is this event about? I've had events. I know people in, say, the gambling industry who run amazing events with big performers and big stages. And for me, that looks so exciting. But I'm thinking, but that's promoting an industry that I don't believe in. I don't appreciate gambling as a concept. So I just say no to those, right? So for me, impact really matters. It's why I still go to colleges and do like 1/10 my fees, because I care that those students get those opportunities. It may not make good business sense, but it sure does make good impact sense. So that's the third one, is impact. I always measure impact. Other non-negotiable values, I need to have a creative outlet. So if there are clients that are too controlling, too limited, it's just not a great experience for me. So having that creative output is important to me. Being able to laugh and enjoy is important for me. So there's some subjective things in there. Yeah, I think those are some of the non-negotiables. And they are a little bit vague because my work is so diverse that this is the common thread. Yeah.
I think you justified them quite well.
That was great.
You think?
You're so good at this.